Hello everyone, hello. This is going to be another one of those rambling video essay type things. And today I'm going to be talking about my carnivore journey. So you may have come across the carnivore diet, which comprises only of animal foods. So it's not purely meat. It can be meat, I eat meat, cheese, butter, eggs. So anything that comes from an animal, and zero from a plant. I mean, you could include, I might put a bit of black pepper, when I fry up my beef. So you could say it's not zero plants, it's like 0.1% plants, but that is the state of my diet right now. But I want to talk about how I got there, and this is something that I've talked about on my streams quite a lot, sometimes giving the whole kind of overview and picture of how I got there, and sometimes a very kind of potted history of it. I'm going to ramble on and describe my journey from 2014 to now, which is 2023, February 2023. And I started this zero carb. So, like I said, not absolute zero, but close to zero carb, if you include black pepper or whatever as carb. Then it's 4.5 years from August 2018. So let me give you a little bit of a kind of timeline, and then we'll get to that, where I am today. Essentially kind of the same as August 2018, but there have been some slight changes. And in parallel with eating only meat and animal products, I've also been doing intermittent fasting. So that's where it began. The journey began not with the what. So you can look at it this way, that there's a what to eat and a when to eat. So those are the two kind of big picture views or perspectives with which I've been looking at it. So first of all, it started with the when to eat. So I think it was July of 2014 when I read Michael Mosley's book, the 5-2 fasting diet, or 5-2 I can't remember the exact title, but a friend of mine had been doing it, and they had gone from not being obese, but certainly noticeably overweight, to then being essentially slim and a healthy weight. And I thought, well, how did you do that? It's quite astonishing what you've done. It's very, very noticeable. And they said, well, I followed this 5-2 diet, and it didn't take very long. Oh, I thought. And at the time, I was doing a lot of exercise. So I was doing long distance cycling, I was teaching yoga, I was lifting weights. So, kind of almost like an amateur athlete, if you like. So that level of physical training, that was very regular and frequent. So you'd think, well, in conjunction with that, I'd have a diet plan. Diet and the way that you eat is nutrition and part of your training, but I seem to just gloss over it. And certainly when I went on cycle rides, I would just eat whatever. I'd be cycling through a village when I'm on a long ride, pop into a newsagent's and, eat packets of crisps, sausage rolls, or if there was like a mini supermarket, just get like a sandwich and what you might call just normal food. But because I was in need of that energy, because I had like X number of hours to still cycle, I'd just dose up on anything that I liked, really, because after hours and hours of just pedaling away, you want some kind of comfort food as well as purely fueling your body. So I'd go for things like sausage rolls and Scotch eggs or whatever took my fancy that day, but not really caring whether the bad stuff, if you like, in the food would have a detrimental effect on me. And because I got into that way of eating when on the days that I was, say, doing a 200 kilometer ride or a 300 kilometer ride, I would then do it, I would eat in the same way when I wasn't cycling, because you just get into the habit of just eating what you like. So I'd say my diet at the time was a kind of no diet. It was a kind of eat what you like, when you like, as much as you like. But you would think, a lot of people think that losing weight or maintaining weight is to do with exercise. They tend to emphasize the exercise bit, but it became apparent to me that the exercising bit, because as I mentioned, I did a lot. I was teaching sort of 12 yoga classes a week and cycling in between each of those, obviously doing the yoga itself, doing weightlifting or body weight training, whatever I was doing at the time, a few times a week, and then training for these rides. So a lot of activity, and you'd think, well, wouldn't that burn a lot of calories and slim you down? But it didn't. My weight and the waistline kept getting bigger, and it was a slow but steady increase in weight. It was something like about half a stone every year. So like small increments, but it just kept going up. There was never like a stasis or a plateau. I'd just keep going up and up and up and up. So I kind of let it go. And where I was teaching yoga, they were essentially like dance studios. So they would have floor-to-ceiling mirrors where they'd have the bar going across. And when I looked at myself in the mirror, I thought, this is not really a picture of health. I'm standing here in a gym, in a studio, and I'm teaching a class of people who've come here to become healthier. And okay, I'm helping them to become more mobile in their bodies by showing them yoga postures and taking them through that. But they look at me and see someone who's a little bit overweight and think, well, he doesn't look that slim or fit. Whereas all the kind of instructors, they're hitting the gym, they're hitting the weights, and they've got their meal plans. And I just thought, no, I want to eat cake, I want to eat chocolate, and I did, but I really stuffed myself because that's what I did during the cycle rides. And then that became my sort of general way of, I'm not blaming the cycling. I was a bit of a foodie as well, and I did cook quite elaborate meals, for other people as well as for just me on my own. So that was very enjoyable, but I wasn't really taking on board the fact that, okay, I need to address this. And it was this machine that I went on, which kind of analyzed your body composition. So in one of the places where I was teaching, it was like a weighing scales, but as well as the bit that you stood on being metal, you had these two handles that you gripped. And what the machine would do was put an electric, like small electric current, obviously, through the body from this hand to this hand, and then measure your body composition. So the amount of bone, the amount of water, muscle, fat, and whatever other tissues, and gave you a sort of breakdown of how you're made currently. You know, you've got this much muscle, this much fat, this much bone, this much water, and then it did a kind of map. So it took like a basic body shape, and it did like the green light system. So you'd have orange, green, red, to show that, all right, there's this much fat in this area of the body. And one of the things that I saw on this diagram that the machine then presented to me as my composition was interstitial fat. So not just a little bit of a belly. So I didn't have a huge belly, but a little bit of a belly that was noticeable. So I could actually grab a bit. And I didn't like that. You know, I didn't want to, at the time, work towards getting a six-pack or anything. But, yeah, being able to grab that amount of flab around the waist made me feel like, okay, this doesn't seem to tie in with me working in a gym and, you know, presenting myself as a healthy example of fitness and vitality. And the same cycling, especially going up the hills, it would have been better if I was a little bit lighter. And then seeing this image on the screen showing that I had, I think it was orange, it wasn't red, so it wasn't like a danger, but it was like warning that, all right, as well as this flab on the outside, on the inside, around my, whatever, around the liver, around the kidneys, there's excess fatty tissues that really are going to, you know, push against the organs, and it's a bit more worrying than just flabby waistline and love handles, that kind of thing. So that was like the first alarm bell, really. And then very soon after that, I saw this friend who had slimmed down severely, or suddenly, or you know, in my eyes, it just seemed like such a big change. I wondered, well, how did you do it? Because I didn't want to, you know, start counting calories or do some kind of crazy diet. And they said, well, it's just this. You follow your normal way of eating, you know, don't change a thing. And then for 2 days a week, you just cut your calories down to 500 calories. So I read the book, I had a look through the website, I had a look at their forums, and then kind of thought about it a bit and decided, okay, I'm going to try this. And really, it just did not take very long at all. And then within, I think just 2 or 3 months, I was something, you know, I'm quite a short person, 165 or centimeters or 5'5", and I was carrying something like 72 kilograms, which is about as heavy as I've ever been in my life. Yeah, something like that, 72, 73. And when I'm sort of slim, healthy weight, I'm more like 60-ish. So I thought, oh gosh, this is like 12 kilos over, which for me, being a smaller, shorter person, is a bigger percentage. So I thought, oh, a bigger percentage of me is body fat, and I need to get rid of that. So I followed this plan, and I really took to it. I had fasted before during my 20s, but once a week maybe, just more for health, and then not once a week, but once a month, and then not every single month. I might do like a couple of days drinking freshly squeezed juices, and then I don't know, 2 months later try it again, but not really consistently. It was more just a trial and error, let's see what happens kind of thing. And there was other kinds of fasts I did, like watermelon for a week. So I had some experience of fasting and just being in a very low calorie, no food sort of state. And I remember from my 20s that it was pretty much okay. I didn't really get cravings and it wasn't overwhelming. So when I started doing the 5-2, it wasn't that big of a deal. And I found that I could quite easily stick to it. And the 500 calories that you were allowed, because the theory was that you would, if the calorie was low enough, you would go into a fasted state and start burning your body fat instead of the food taken. So the body is still eating, but it's eating the stored fat rather than eating through the mouth. So it's still consuming, I guess, but from what's there. And the weight came off. The weight came off really quickly, and I went from 73 down to something like 57, like really, really fast. And the cycling was noticeable. One of the things I remember, because you're in, my riding position was the kind of bent over, more like a racing bike type way of, and I was fitted as well. I could talk about my bike fitting as, but I had a professional bike fit, and that was the position they gave me. And it's just, the most efficient way to ride your bike. But what happened was, because I was bent forward, I could really feel the belly kind of pushing back against me, or the tightness around there. And that was gone. It was so nice not to be able to feel that anymore. And sometimes even when, my legs are coming up, I could feel them like gently rubbing or pressing against my the midsection. And to have that area just gone was amazing. And then I I felt like maybe this is a bit extreme, 57. I kind of put on a couple more kilos, and then I just stayed there. And for the next 4 years then, from 2014 to kind of early 2018, like very beginning, like about this time of year, like February. Obviously, when you watch this, it could be like now or any time of the year, but it's now kind of February 2023, and it was about February 2018, and for some unknown reason to me, it stopped working. The 5-2 that I'd been doing. And one of the reasons I liked it so much was that for the other 5 days when I wasn't on this low restricted, and sometimes I'd eat even less than 500, like 300, it really didn't matter to me because I was very comfortable with it. I might eat something like a couple of hard-boiled eggs and then some steamed green beans with a dash of olive oil, and that's it for the whole day. But during those 4 years, if I had periods where maybe I ate a bit too much during the week, so I might be eating like chicken and chips, chocolate bars, anything really. I didn't restrict myself in any way, and maybe some weeks I'd kind of put on a little bit of weight. So what I do is then the following week I do 3 days. So instead of 2 days of low calorie fasted days, I'd do 3 days just for that week, and then just shed that extra weight. So I didn't want to allow it to get to a point where it was noticeable again. So even if I put on like half a kilo, it's like, all right, no, that needs to go, and it would work. But what I noticed around like end of January, February, like 3.5 years into this, was that my tactic of doing 3 days a week, if I happened to put on some weight, wasn't working anymore. And it was puzzling because, well, this is exactly what I had been doing for like 3.5 years, and it just always works. So what was going on? And obviously, without doing blood tests or any kind of lab, there's no way I'm going to figure out the why. So I gave up on that, even though it was kind of interesting to consider it. I needed to figure out a solution. I needed to find another way of eating that I could implement into my lifestyle, but that I could also maintain for long. Like this one had carried me for 3.5 years, and now it was not working. And I was still a little bit concerned about the amount of sugar I was eating, the amount of, pre-packed food, things like chocolates and biscuits, cakes, and takeaway food. Because, I just allowed myself to indulge. And I allowed myself to indulge based on the way I was eating before I started managing it in any way. So all I'd done is to focus on the when. When do you eat? When do you not eat? So, for example, in the week, I would not eat or eat a minimal amount on a Monday, say. And then Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, I would eat whatever I liked, as often as I liked. And then come Friday, again, minimal amount of food, which would then allow me to just indulge myself the rest of the week. So it was quite a nice balance for me. And I thought, well, this is going to carry me for the rest of my life. I can just enjoy my food for 5 days of the week, eat a minimal amount the other 2, and I maintain a healthy weight, and I don't need to think about the what. I don't need to think about, this has too much fat, or this doesn't have enough vitamins, this has too many additives. I don't need to kind of worry about any of those details. I can just continue as I am, sort of thing. But now I thought, well, this is no longer working, and I carried on for about a month, I think. I started doing some research into other things I could do. Hang on, I'm just going to grab some water. And while I did that, so I didn't make any changes, I was just researching and writing notes and reading articles, watching videos, and noticed that as I continued doing my 5-2 way of eating, my weight just kept going up and up and up, like not massive amount, but just in a month it seemed like this is like more than any kind of increase I've experienced before. So something is definitely wrong here. So I did try the trick of 3 days. So I'd have 4 days of eating, 3 days of very minimal to very low calorie, and putting myself into the fasted state. But it didn't stay the weight gain, and so by February I was shortlisting possible diets that could work for me, or possible ways of eating. So these are not diets. Diets tend to be very short term, 2 or 3 months, and then you go back to your normal way of eating. What I was looking at is a way of eating, a lifelong plan that I could then switch over to and then stick to. And of all the different ways of eating I came across, both diets and ways of eating, they all seem to focus on reducing carbohydrates or cutting them out altogether. So I came across things like the Atkins diet, the beef and eggs diet. There's like bodybuilders back in the 60s trying to get really lean. There was keto. There was just low carb, but not essentially, because keto's quite strict in its description of how you do it. And then things like the paleo diet. There was Tim Ferriss's slow carb diet. But if you go through that list, all of them are kind of emphasizing that you need to kind of get carbs, either reduce them or get them like so low it's almost negligible. Some of the keto macro ratios was like, they had fat up to like 70%. So that was intriguing. I read about a guy doing this race across America and just drinking avocado oil, and I thought, right, that's like real switch in fuel source from the typical complex carbohydrate type of fuel over to fat. My understanding was if you consume fat, you need a lot more oxygen and you need to be doing like much, much lower level activity. But what I didn't understand at the time is that your body has to go through this transition so that it can actually burn fat and break down fat a bit more efficiently, because no carbohydrates are available. So you kind of have to deprive your body of carbohydrates until you reach that stage where your body can go into ketosis. And that's the whole theory behind the keto diet, is that you're putting your body into this state of ketosis where it's creating these ketone bodies by breaking down the fat. And I find all of that interesting, and so I thought, all right, so what's the plan then? What do I do? And usually when I'm trying something new, whether it's a diet, whether it's an exercise program, whether it might be a video game, or if I'm learning a language, or I don't know, playing the guitar, anything, whatever new thing that I'm trying to do, but also looking towards making it a regular thing, like long term, like I want to keep doing this for a year or 2 years. I'm not just going to try it. I'm going to give myself a test period. And typically, I find for myself that test period, something between 2 and 3 weeks is about right. Some people say 10 days are enough. For me, I think a little bit over 2 weeks is enough for me to go through that kind of discomfort of the change, to gradually sort of implement it into my lifestyle, but also short enough so if I then decide, nah, this isn't really for me, that I haven't wasted that much time. And it's a period of time when it feels like you can maintain motivation, you can maintain a sort of willpower kind of thing. Once you kind of shift from like a short-term period like that to then long-term, a year, 2 years, 3 years, you have to shift from willpower into making it a habit. And then, you don't really need willpower anymore. The habit just is a lot more powerful, and that carries you. But anyway, that's not really something I want to get into today. But that is kind of interesting in itself if you don't quite understand the whole process of behavior change and how to implement behavior changes in your life. You can't use willpower for long-term things. Even in a day, you can only do a certain amount of like to-do list, task processing with willpower. The rest has to be carried by habit. So I thought, all right, let me give it 2 or 3 weeks, see how it goes. So I went for like a hybrid of keto, low carb, and just made up some meal plans, and also decided to change from the 5-2 to the 16-8 intermittent fasting protocol, because I found the shifting from having a day when I'm eating a lot to having a day where I eat a little bit, I thought that does work or has worked, but I'd prefer to have a uniform repeating pattern, but on a daily basis rather than repeating on a weekly basis. So I thought, all right, let me put that into the experiment as well. So I've got 2 variables, which is probably not the best way to kind of measure, but I decided to do that. So I'd have my first meal a little bit later in the day. I think I started with the feeding period a little bit earlier in the day. So I'd have something like bacon and eggs, and then low carb, so I added something like spinach or kale, some kind of greenery. So there's a lot of volume to it, so I'm getting my fiber and I'm getting my vitamins and things, but it's very low carb. Or things like cauliflower I'd have later in the day. But the 16-8 means that for inside of a 24-hour cycle, for 8 hours you have what's called a feeding window. So for example, it could be from midday until 8 p.m. and within those two, in that boundary from midday until 8 p.m. you can eat. You can have 2 meals, 3 meals, whatever you like, and then soon as 8 o'clock strikes, that's it, you stop eating until midday the following day. So I think I tried having breakfast and had a meal at sort of 9 o'clock in the morning. So I do all my kind of meditation and weightlifting and things fully fasted, and then fry up bacon and eggs, put lots of butter in it because the fat ratio was quite high. Obviously no bread, nothing that had high carbohydrate content, and then boil up some greens to go with it, and have an avocado, and then say from 9 until 3. But I found that, so I did that for a little while, so that would be my window. I think maybe it was even a little bit bigger, so it wasn't properly 16-8 to start with. It might have been closer to, I don't know, 14-10. But I was kind of tapering towards it. And I found that for me, starting my eating later in the day worked better. Like, I found that even though I enjoyed breakfast, I didn't actually need it, and I didn't actually miss it. And many people are like that. I talked to another friend and they said, oh, well, if I did it, I'd definitely eat in the morning, because as soon as I wake up, I'm hungry. So I would definitely want some food then. Whereas for me, I didn't feel any hunger. And so I think it was a bit later than midday, more like 1 or even up till 2 p.m. because I prefer to eat later in the day. And that's what I did. So it would have been between 2 p.m. and 10 p.m. would be my eating window. And then I'd eat, pork chops, any kind of meat, but I'd always have a little bit of greenery with it. So it was a bit like the traditional meat and greens kind of thing, but without the potatoes and the gravy. And that became my way of eating for the next few weeks. That was it. Or I'd, cook some chicken's thighs in the oven, and then, have some broccoli and cauliflower with that. And that seemed to be fine for a few weeks. And I decided, okay, I think after the end of that short experiment, I think I can carry on with this. And I was losing the weight that I'd put on. It was only a tiny amount, but it was worrying me that, okay, maybe I'm on this cycle of steady weight gain again. So even though I'd only put on like 2 or 3 kilos, I thought, okay, let's just do something about it now, preventative measure. And this is what I did. So around about March, I'd say, of 2018, I decided, right, I'm going to go keto, low carb, and, figure out my own meal plan, take ideas from what other people are doing, and then tweak them a bit so they fit into my own lifestyle. So I had my window figured out, 2 until 10, something like that. Obviously I could change it depending on if I was meeting someone and they wanted to eat a bit earlier, and they wanted me to join in their eating, or later, even if I wanted to stay up a bit later and eat later, that was also fine. So I could easily change that window, so that was kind of flexible. And there was quite a lot of variety in what I was eating. I could have chicken, pork, beef, fish, lamb, a mixture of all of those. And lots of vegetables that were low in carb. But, after a while you get into certain ones that you like and prefer, and you don't really miss the other ones so much. So I then carried on with that for 5 months. So between the March and the August, that's what I did. But because there were carbs in the diet, even though it was a small percentage of the diet, I wanted to now, and because of my background of being a foodie and being someone who enjoyed cooking, I would still think about dessert. And one of the desserts, like a low carb dessert that I made, was made with mascarpone cheese with pure cocoa powder, so no sugar, and it was like a chocolate mousse essentially. So instead of cream I was using, I was a bit wary of dairy and whether that's going to give me an upset stomach, but cream cheese mascarpone as well. That's not cream, that's more cheese. And so I mixed the chocolate powder, and then I used some powdered artificial sweetener, and it was really nice. It was a nice way to have a dessert after a meal and still stay within my kind of low carb way of eating. But that was then a sort of gateway to then looking at and looking for other kinds of very low carb desserts. And what I wanted was to have a meal plan or a way of eating which included both the two big perspectives, both the when and the what. I eat this and I don't eat this. I eat now, I don't eat now. That was confusing. I eat at this time, but not at this time. So those are all kind of clear, put in place, and then I just get on with following it. But the opportunity then for variety turned out to be a little bit detrimental, because I was thinking, oh right, well, maybe I could put a few nuts in it, still very low carb, but more like a condiment. Right at the beginning of this, I was talking about putting some black pepper, which now I'm thinking is, well, that's a carb, but it's 0.001%. It's hardly worth considering. But putting in a handful of nuts, well, that's a lot of carbs. And it was worrying me because I was more interested in the flavor and the texture rather than the content. And I could see the slippery slope happening again, that if I'm enjoying this, I could tweak this dessert slightly. Maybe put it, the sweetener isn't, it's not quite as nice as real sugar. Maybe I could put some maple syrup, or, it's like you start following one thought to the next thought, and even though you're just thinking, along with that thought, there's a wanting that goes with it. And then, I'm browsing these recipes and thinking, well, I could try that. That's a slight variation. But you're still connected to using food as a sort of entertainment, as a pleasure, not that you shouldn't, but what it does, it leads you to wanting more of it. Certainly for me, anyway. And I thought, I don't know if this way of eating, this low carb keto that I'm doing, is sustainable. So I began looking again, and I came across something called zero carb carnivore. And I came across a website called Zero Carb Zen. Obviously came across Dr. Sean Baker and a few other proponents of the carnivore diet. And crazy as it sounds, there was a YouTube video with the clickbaity title called I ate bacon for 30 days and here's what happened. One of those kind of... And I thought, this is a bit of a gimmick, isn't it? Or is it? And I decided to watch it. And what the guy did was similar to me experimenting for 2 or 3 weeks. He experimented with eating only rashers of bacon. I think he was frying them, cooking them in the oven. But that was it. He ate only bacon for 30 days. And at the end of it, he was perfectly healthy. He realized that he didn't need vegetables. And I think he'd lost a bit of weight. And he was just really astonished. So even though I saw or regarded that video as being, a bit sensationalist, it made me then take the whole pure meat or pure animal foods a bit more seriously. And I thought, maybe another experiment is due here, because it simplifies things for me, as I don't need to think about the small amount of carbs and whether I can sneak in a dessert as long as it's low carb. So I thought, well, could I just eat this way? A bit like, the Atkins. I think with the Atkins, I remember reading that. I think I did it for a few weeks, a long time ago, like 2000. It was a time when I was doing the zone diet. So yeah, I've got a history of following various diets. But I thought, okay, let me try this again. Let me try another experiment where, I don't know, for 2 weeks maybe, I'll just eat meat and other animal products. And then if at the end of that 2 weeks I think, I'm done with this, I don't want to continue, I can just go back to my keto low carb and find another way to stop the kind of craving for variety and possibly getting back to carbs again. So that was in August of 2018, and I went to visit a friend in Europe, and I started then. I don't know why, or I had started a few days before I was due to go and visit. So there I was, like, being in a foreign country, and I was just going to the supermarket, buying meat, cooking it myself, and then because I'm used to fasting, if I'm out at a restaurant and they're eating something else, I might have something, maybe there's something on the menu that I could have, and if not, then I could just fast. And I was fairly comfortable with that. So, if I needed a snack, I'd pop into a shop or a soup, just get a big lump of cheese. And being a European country, they had much, much better cheeses than you can get here in the UK, or bigger selection and better quality. So that was nice, and I was making omelettes and things. And it seemed like something I could do, I could maintain long term. And so I did. Once I came back from that holiday, visiting a friend, I continued with the zero carb carnivore. And I watched a lot of carnivore videos on the YouTube. So Sean Baker, there was someone called Paul Scott, I can't remember the name now, and Amber O'Hearn, people who'd been pure carnivore for quite a while, Michaela Peterson, of course, and just slowly took ideas from them, like what benefits they'd gained, whether it was sustainable, and just carried on with it. And now it's 4.5 years. 4.5 years since I started that. So this way of eating has actually gone on longer than the previous, 2014 to early 2018. So it's like a year longer than I maintained that. And in some ways, this has been much, much easier. It's been just as satisfying. And there have been a whole load of benefits. So that's one of the things that people ask is like, okay, you're doing this pure meat animal foods only. What are the benefits? What have you kind of realized? And it's quite hard quite hard to describe or put into words sometimes, because they've happened quite slowly, and I haven't stopped and looked back and said, oh, well, that when I ate that way, this used to happen. So I've taken the time to put together a few of those benefits. So here we go. I'm going to start and make a list. They're not in any particular order. So I've got a few. I think there's about 7 of them or so. So I'm not going to do a YouTube style of here are my 7 benefits, let's go. Well, I've said it now, haven't I? All right, so number 1, again, it's not top of the list, it's just I'm pulling these out of my head. So great skin. This is something I noticed very, very early on into my carnivore diet journey, is that the skin, all across my face, I was noticing it on my arms, on my thighs, lower back, that my skin would feel similar to, let's say you had a shower and you put on some moisturizer. At that moment, the way that your skin feels, really soft, really smooth, like it's been cared for, I found that my skin feels like that all the time. A lot of the kind of dry spots and things just cleared up, and I just felt like I just come out of the shower and put on the moisturizer, and just the skin on the whole of my body just felt good. In the winter, I used to get chapped lips and things. Never had that again. So that was one very big noticeable change as a result of the carnivore diet. Okay, here's another one. Dental problems. 0 dental problems. Since starting that, I haven't had any tooth pain, toothache, tooth decay. I do get a little bit of plaque. I just scraped that off, but I haven't had to go to the dentist. No tooth pain, toothache. It's like such a kind of contrast, because before, like I said, I was eating lots of chocolates, I was eating cakes and things, so sugar in my teeth, and I did have a lot of visits to the dentist. I did have a lot of pain. I did have teeth breaking and crumbling sometimes when I just didn't want to go to the dentist, and all of that is just gone. I still have broken teeth from the previous years, but now nothing. I don't even need to think about it. Obviously get bits of meat stuck in the teeth, so I've got a lot more into flossing than I used to, and maybe that's helped, because I floss regularly more so than I did before, because I want to get the bits of meat out, or the bits of sausage or whatever. But it's just a thing I don't need to think about and not worry about, because in the 4.5 years, and I've not been to the dentist once, and I've not had any problems with my teeth. Energy. What do we mean by energy? Just the feeling of being alert, being awake, being motivated. Not like super Mr. Motivator. I don't mean like that, but just like the opposite of lethargy. The midday slump, and then the crash, the food coma. I still get a little bit of food coma if I do really stuff myself, but even then I can still get up and do stuff. Whereas the carbohydrate crash that you would get if you'd eaten like a big bowl of pasta, followed by some chocolates and cakes, of course, as that was me, don't get that anymore. I suppose, it's hard to remember what it was like now, as it's like 4.5 years ago, but the big kind of high that is short-lived, I don't get those anymore, but my energy doesn't do this kind of dipping and climbing. It's just steady. So from the time I wake up in the morning, it does fluctuate, but you don't get these big swings. So I do get like weary towards the end of the day. I do, have periods where I feel sleepy, but it's not those kind of huge crashes. And yeah, like I said, the amount of fluctuations of the dips and the climbs, they're so small that you could say that it is just steady throughout the day. Because I guess because I'm fasting and I'm just used to that, and the body is just able to access the fuel that I have in my body really easily. And it's nice to be able to just rely on that. It's nice to have confidence to know that, I didn't have breakfast, therefore I'm going to feel weak or dizzy or this or that. It's just like, I can eat, I can not eat, and I'll be fine. So as well as steady energy, there's a steady kind of confidence in myself that the energy will be there, it will be available, and it's not going to go up and down. So that's a big plus. And I guess along with that steady energy, the kind of mental focus. And this, I think this came kind of slowly. Because if you're in that slump, let's call it the mid-afternoon slump, that most people will recognize, along with that will be a lack of motivation, a kind of real feeling of lethargy. You can't really, you've got tasks to do, but you can't really be bothered to do any of it. And that seems to have gone away. I still get, lack of motivation and lethargy, but I'm able to kind of snap myself out of it a lot more easily. I mean, that could be due to other things I'm doing, like meditating, and the fact that I do train physically maybe allows me to kind of go from zero to like, right, let's rather than staring at the task that needs to be done, I can kind of snap myself out of that, oh God, I don't feel like doing it, to like, all right, let's just get on with this. So that didn't happen before. I would have long periods of procrastination, or periods where, my mind would be wandering off and I'd be avoiding the thing I needed to do. And even when I'm doing it, I can stay engaged and stick to it, see it through more so than I did before. So like I said, it could be to do with other things I'm doing, such as having a daily, better sleep schedule and meditating and so on. But before I was a carnivore way of eating, I did find that my mind would kind of drift away, and it'd take me a lot longer to kind of bring myself back, have a little pep talk with myself to like, right, we need to get this done, there's a deadline here, clients are waiting, typical sort of scenario where you don't feel like doing something but it needs to be done. How do you get there? So it's a kind of, this mental focus became more available to me by cutting out carbs. Okay, well, obvious one, lower body fat, because the body is burning that fat, is using that fat as its main fuel source. So with keto, they talk about ketone bodies, beta hydroxybutyrate being the buzzword, obviously the ketone body that becomes the fuel instead of things like sugar and breaking down carbohydrates into simple hexose sugars. And it can take from anything from 2 or 3 weeks to months for some people to make that transition from primarily sugar fuel to fat or ketone bodies as your main fuel source. But once that is there, you really notice yourself getting a lot leaner. And I was saying earlier how when I had that flabby midsection, I was trying to put this idea of, no, you've got to go for the six-pack. Well, now the six-pack is there. I'm not a bodybuilder or anything. I do strength training and I do fitness training, but it's just to kind of maintain a healthy level of strength and fitness, not to compete and not to be in movies or, be a model of any kind. But when I look in the mirror and I still need to, look in the correct light, because I'm not like overly training abs and things, but it's there, the leanness is there compared to before, when there was like an amount of flab covering the whole body, really more so around the midsection and hips and the love handles at the side, as they're called. But all of that gradually disappeared, certainly more so when I shifted from 16.8, which then became 24. So the window, the eating window, just kept getting smaller and smaller, essentially. And then I thought, well, this was last summer. I thought, maybe I can change to 1 meal a day. So then came another experiment of 2 or 3 weeks, where I decided to just have 1 meal a day, maybe with a follow-up snack, and also simplified my diet. I'll talk about that as one of the other benefits. But that last little bit of body fat that I was trying to, lose around the belly, just, with 1 meal a day, that just dropped away. I'm not saying you should do that, but I'm just telling you my story of, right, this is what I did. So there was this slight kind of vanity in there, that really nice to see the six-pack. It's like almost there, but not quite. But that did the job. And no particular extra effort required. No, let's say, chemical enhancements were needed. Now, this one may be quite surprising, but minor ailments. What can we put under minor ailments? Coughs and colds, stomach upsets. I used to get those fairly regularly. So, what's fairly regularly? Once a month I might have some kind of stomach upset that might last for 3 or 4 days, or I might get a cold. I remember 2017, the year before I started this, and it was notable because it really struck me how I kept getting ill over and over again, but in a minor way. It wasn't like chicken pox, or it wasn't like typhoid fever, nothing major, but bad enough to kind of make you lie down and have a rest. So, yeah, getting a cold, maybe some kind of stomach flu. But every single month for that whole year, for, I don't know, a few days of that month, I was out of it. Maybe even longer than a few days. And it really felt like I had to take time out to recover from that. But since becoming fully keto, carnivore, animal food, it's been like nothing. I did have a cold or something, which did put me out like a couple of weeks ago. But then prior to that, I had maybe 2 years of like nothing. Like, you know, the odd bad stomach, which might be like once every couple of months. I will say though, at the beginning of the shifting, I did have some stomach problems. So yeah, full disclosure, it wasn't like an instant transition. So going from low carb keto to then zero carb, I did have this sort of fluctuation between kind of like constipation and diarrhea. So my stomach was kind of like, oh, what do I do here? I think it was just going through that. And then it just went completely quiet. It's like even the gurgling sounds and the stomach digesting stuff, that just became quieter and quieter and quieter, to the point where it's like you don't notice it. But that did fluctuate for a few months, and during those first few months I did kind of have doubts, and I thought, well, if this is going to be how it is, you know, if one day I'm sitting on the loo and nothing's happening, and the next day I'm just going backwards and forwards, I mean, I don't mean like the change happened every single day, but I'd get days, and because those days were happening, it made me wonder, well, how much longer is this going to take? Is it going to stop, or is this how it's going to be? But at some point it just stopped, and my body just transitioned to no carbs, and it was fine. Or maybe it was lack of fiber, I don't know, but or it was, you know, my body was clearing house, you know, a bit like colonic irrigation, that sort of thing. I don't know what happened, but there was a transition period, and if you try this, then you will probably experience something similar, whether it's to do with the stomach. It could be that you get headaches, it could be that your energy isn't steady from day one, but there will be a transition period. Most of the articles I read did say that a transition period, anything from a few weeks to a few months, will be required. So just yeah. The disconnect from food. What do I mean by that? I mean the craving. So I was talking about doing the low carb diet and making these desserts, and I was worried about the desserts kind of taking me back to carbs again, and that I was craving them and thinking about them, looking at recipes, especially because I was a foodie. As I said, I was interested in food and enjoyed cooking. And what's happened is that not only is the craving gone, but that kind of desire to kind of elaborate, create variety has just gone away. I've gone away from food being a kind of entertainment and a sort of distraction or a hobby to being just purely fuel. That's not to say I don't enjoy food anymore, and I still, on the odd occasion, will look up recipes. And towards the end of last year, I got myself a little slow cooker, and I tried a few recipes in there. But essentially, I tend to eat the same thing at the same time every day, and I'm perfectly content with that. It's almost like I'm an animal. Like if you've got a cat or a dog at home, when it comes to feed that pet, just open a tin and pour it into the bowl, or dry food, but there's no real variety. Here's my cat, the vet said give him this, right, I'm giving him that. That's it. They don't need but can we go to that restaurant next week? Or I really want to try some Vietnamese food, or maybe we can try some Thai food. It's like cat doesn't think like that. Dog doesn't think like that. So I've kind of become that cat or dog. I'm perfectly good with half a kilo of beef with 4 eggs. That's kind of what I eat every day. And I just make a kind of scrambled egg sort of thing with minced beef. And, grate a little bit of cheese on top of that. And that's it. Around about 5 p.m. every day, I'll have that. And then maybe follow up with tiny bit of chorizo, or maybe, scramble a couple of eggs if I need it. But otherwise, that is my one meal. And there's no need to kind of change that particular meal. It's not like, oh, well, Thursday I had that, maybe Friday I'll have something else. And you would think, well, God, isn't that really boring? It used to be. That's how I used to think and feel, like anyone else would. That, oh my God, I like this, but I can't eat this every day. Well, now I can, and I'm perfectly content with it. And knowing that means that I don't need to spend time, it is a pleasant and enjoyable experience, but I don't need to spend time looking at recipes and creating different meal plans. I don't need to then go and shop for those ingredients. And if I'm doing some kind of elaborate thing, then, I've got extra cleanup to do. It's like, because of the lack of craving for that novelty or variety, or the need for that kind of entertainment value, it's just that I can focus on other things. And the half a kilo of beef mince, or ground beef as you say in the US, with 4 eggs and a bit of cheese is enough. It's like, that's in the dog food tin, that goes onto my plate. I don't even use a plate, I just eat straight out of my cast iron pan, and that's it. I have that every single day, and I might make a slight change every now and then, and cook some beef chunks in my slow cooker, but that might be once every 3 weeks. But even then, I'm perfectly content just to have my beef and eggs, and I'm good with that. And even though I was a foodie and I did like the variety, I don't feel that need anymore, and I don't turn over ideas of what I could be eating, like, oh, maybe tomorrow, how about I make this, or maybe I can have bacon or chicken, or just like that kind of yearning is just not there. So to me, that's a good thing. It means I've changed, and it means I can focus on other things. I'm not saying that being a foodie, being a kind of amateur chef is not a bad thing. It's just, I don't need to do that. I don't need to kind of have that variety in order to feel fulfilled. having the same thing at the same time every day is absolutely fine. It fuels my body. I get all of the other benefits I've mentioned, and I get extra time. So yeah, it's an interesting one. It might be worth kind of reflecting on it a bit more as to how much you depend on food as a source of entertainment value, and if you didn't have that, would it be a big deal, would it? But it's just gone. The craving is just not there at all. There's no willpower. I can't do willpower, but if people are eating cakes and biscuits and whatever, it doesn't affect me. There isn't that kind of clingy yearning of like, I gotta have it. It's like, there is like, no craving. And now this one is not particularly to do with the carnivore diet, and some may say, oh well, if I'm going and buying grass-fed and locally grown organic, then it's more than likely going to be more expensive. But for me personally, especially now that I'm doing a 1 meal a day, but even before that, where I had 2 meals a day, it still works out cheaper than when I was an omnivore, let's say. I would say my omnivorous days were kind of leaning towards eating Pringles and eating chips and eating whatever really, cakes, biscuits, anything I could get my hands on. But because of the eating out as well, eating out meaning not sitting down at a restaurant and eating out, I mean like going for a walk, I go past a little shop, go and buy a snack, and okay, that's like a few pennies, but those pennies add up because I was doing it a lot. And then, like I said, I'll be going this cycle ride and I get sausage roll or a Scotch egg, and I justify that as comfort food and a bit of calories, but also I need this comfort to carry me through the rest of this ride. But now that the craving's gone, well, if I go for a walk plus I'm fasting, then I'm not spending that money. I'm not thinking about that snack. Those kind of behaviors then have just dropped away. They're not part of me anymore. So I'm just getting a pack of 500 grams minced beef, 10% fat, which is like current price, something like £3. So for less than £5 a day, I'm not eating out either, which I could do. I could go out, have a steak, be kind of expensive, so I could do that. And for a period of time, there's a butcher on the high street which does source all of its meat from local farms, and it is organic, grass-fed, fairly expensive. But I was going there, let's say for a few months. I would go there and get a steak, like a ribeye or a sirloin, just once a week, just to kind of treat myself. And even doing that, because I don't want to go there every day, because then, obviously, lots of money's gone, and I couldn't really afford to go there every day. But once a week, I thought, if I spend like half of my food budget going here, it's a nice way to kind of affirm my carnivorehood. But then after a while, that novelty wore off as well. Now, initially, when I fried up a steak with butter and I got a nice bit of ribeye, and then it's nice and dry from the butchers, it was amazing, really was. I could really taste a huge difference between a supermarket bought steak and that one. But then slowly I got used to it. I could still taste the difference, and it still felt a bit like a treat, but slightly less each time. And then so I had a little period of novelty with that, and it did feel like a treat. But then again, I just felt like I didn't need it. So a bit like that disconnect I was talking about. Okay, that was nice for a short while, but I don't really need this. So yeah, maybe if you're not doing the one meal a day and you are, like, say, having a few rashers of like bacon and eggs for breakfast, and then lunchtime you're having your roast chicken, and then evening, it may be very similar to your current food costs. But you may find that you start buying in bulk. So you've got a big kind of chest freezer, you go to a local farmer and get like half a pig or something, and in the course of a year you actually save money rather than spend. And then, when you're out, well, what do you snack on? If you really do absolutely have to have a snack, there's things like beef jerky, or you go to a burger place and just have the beef patties without the buns. But that's going to depend on you. If you do decide to do this, the way that you implement it is your choice and your lifestyle. But for me, because I'm doing this fasting, which is now one meal a day, so it's like almost a 24-hour fast, or let's call it 23-hour, with a 1-hour eating window. The amount of food, because I go for like the cheaper cuts of meat, and I'm getting mincemeat because that's cheaper than buying steak. I'm good with that, and yeah, I've saved a lot of money. And you might also, if you shop smartly, like I said, buy frozen bulk amounts of meat. But certainly for me, I've found it a lot cheaper. Okay, well, I've rambled on for nearly an hour and a half. But hopefully that gives you a picture of my whole journey from 2014 until now. And I don't know when you're going to be watching this, maybe later in 2023, maybe in 2024 even. Hopefully I'll still be doing this, but it's just, for me now, it's just so easy. It's just something I don't even need to think about. It's just at 5 o'clock, I'll have my beef and eggs, maybe something different, probably not. And I'm perfectly fine with that. And all of these benefits stay with me. And hopefully, as I talked about, the 5-2 stopped working. It's been 4.5 years, and so far it's still working. I don't know, maybe next year or maybe later this year I'll find, something's not working. I start getting headaches or I start getting stomach upsets. But so far, it's been smooth journey. Yeah, any questions you have? So I'll kind of wind up there. I don't really have that much more to say on it. I have rambled on for nearly an hour and a half. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments, or you can get in touch with me during my Twitch streams and talk about it. as I said at the beginning of this video, that I do talk about health and well-being on stream, and my own way of eating does come up a lot, so I get to talk about it. And it's interesting that some other people have adopted, certainly cutting out sugar, cutting down a lot of their carbs, and finding that, just their overall health and well-being has improved. But yeah, if you are not sure whether to do this or how you might do it, then feel free to get in touch through the comments or through my Twitch stream. And hopefully you can find a way of eating that really works for you. This one works for me, and it's gone through all these different changes and different ups and downs, but here I am at the moment, and it's good. It works. I feel good, and I don't feel a need to change it again. So I've got a way of eating for the rest of my life, really. So GG's. Well, if you're still here after an hour and a half, thank you for watching. And bye bye for now. Hope to see you again soon.